What happens when it becomes a reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to Nightmare Success and Now podcast. How to overcome the fears and nightmares that make you so great. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys that we've been working with and others who survive their own nightmares. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad, there's some humor. Hopefully, come away with a message simple that will help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own life. It's where you come to what happens when you work through it becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome? And if you like this show, if you like anything in this show, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff that helps the show grow. Guys, I'm a big fan of this guy. I just told him that before. I probably sound like I was in his fan club, but I am. It's Jay Jordan. And I want to read real quick here because I was reading different things about Jay and I watched some stuff on YouTube. But The Guardian, the way that they start this out in The Guardian, it says when Jay Jordan was getting out of prison in 2012, he had an ambitious plan to turn his life around. He's going to sell life insurance, restore old cars, get a real estate license, establish a community barbershop. There was one problem. His criminal record barred him from every single industry. 10 years later, Jordan has led a successful campaign to give millions of California residents the opportunity to clear their criminal record and be free from the similar barriers. State lawmakers passed a bill championed by Jordan allowing for automatic sealing of a wide range of arrest and conviction records, the most far-reaching reform of its kind in the U.S., experts say. The harsh treatment of people with criminal records, a uniquely American phenomenon in a country that is a global leader in incarceration, traps tens of millions of people in poverty, denying them access to jobs, housing, education, and other basic rights. And the thing about Jay Jordan is he's a doer. He doesn't just talk about it. When there's problems, he goes out and he finds solutions for them and gets right in the middle of it. He's passed 100 laws in the last 10 years. Nobody does that. He co-founded Time Done, the CEO of Alliance for Safety and Justice, where, again, that individual has passed 100 laws in that time period of 10 years, benefiting Reentry for justice impacted people. If you want to find him on Instagram, there's a lot of people following him. He's Mr. J. Jordan with over 1 million followers on Instagram. It's an unbelievable story. It's homeless. It's getting into the community and giving back. It's building a wall, and I want to talk about his wall because it actually had a huge impact, and it's not the wall you're thinking. Jay Jordan. Oh, I got to read my show sponsor. Before we jump into Jay Jordan, we got to recognize the show sponsor because he's going to be ticked off if we don't. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in a dealership to buy a car. You know, it's kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Okay, Jay Jordan. We're back. Welcome in, my man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you, Brent?
I'm good. So I was telling you before we got, I was so intrigued with this YouTube interview I was watching from Big Boy TV that I got so enthused. I pulled my laptop over to my wife, Julie. I said, "You got to listen to this guy. He's hitting on all cylinders." And then I heard about your background. I mean, you had a dad that was a minister from Oklahoma. I think you have some of that DNA in your blood. Your mom was from California, but Jay, I mean, you've been on quite a journey, man.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey to say the least. It's I've had a run.
Well, I want to let's go back and tell me a little bit about little Jay Jordan, when he's growing up, what was life like? Siblings? I think you're one of eight.
Yeah.
Uh, take us back into that world.
Yeah, I had a great upbringing, man. I like, my parents are both ministers, academics, and practitioners.
Yep.
I don't come from a broken home. I don't come from a statistically wrecked home. I came from a household of love and appreciation and authenticity and faith, and traditional family values. It was the external forces, right, that really begin to kind of knock the train off the track. Growing up, I had no one really knows this, but I really love what folks do with foundations like Say or the Stuttering Foundation, because I had and still have a debilitating stuttering problem. Like it was when I was
Are you
younger. It was
kidding me?
yeah, no,
I
it
can't
was
believe that. I mean, I would never have thought that.
yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad. So much so, Brent, I used to go into convulsions, eyes rolling back in the head, like I'm, having a seizure. When I would say difficult words, I would get tripped up, and it lasts like literally from I can remember I had a stuttering problem. And so growing up with that, going to school, you can only imagine,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
kids would say things, and I reached a point of time to where, I got tired of them saying things, and I would do things. So you would say
yeah,
something, you're going to get a response, and that
yeah.
was really kind of, started me on this journey of, not liking authority. I remember I used to go to school, Creekside Elementary, and God bless educators. God bless special education folks. Everyone working in that field, they are doing God's work. Literally,
Yeah,
it is
I
so
agree.
difficult to work with kids that have stuttering problems or ADHD or any of that stuff,
Yeah,
because they're not only dealing with the ailment itself, they're dealing with the pressure society puts on the kid and all the trauma
absolutely.
that comes from that. The one thing that I didn't like about it was they sent me like in the middle of the day, so all the kids were kind of like up. They sent me to a tiny little room that everyone knew if you went to that room there was something wrong with you in terms of your ability to,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
keep up,
Kids are mean.
yeah, academically. And I used to go to this room, and all the classrooms were lined up in the library, and the room was right there, so everyone could
Oh
see it.
man.
I would walk out of my classroom every Thursday and go to this room and do speech therapy. And I would leave, and I would see kids looking. I would be like, "Oh my god, they know that I have this ailment," and it was so bad. Like it was so bad, you know. So that was really, I won't say traumatizing, but it taught
Oh,
me a
that sounds
valuable lesson.
traumatizing, though. I mean, I think stuttering in general would be something that you're always thinking about. You know,
Yeah,
that it's in the back of your mind. Is it going to happen? Am I going to get
yeah,
stuck? You know,
yeah,
that's something I get that
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And that was tough. That was tough growing up with a stuttering problem. And so what ends up happening is you compound your friends based on similar circumstances.
Yeah,
And in my case, the circumstances was, well, the world is against me, or people really don't know who I am. So there's other people like that in the
yeah,
school. Just so
sure,
happens that they were dealing with economic challenges at home that I wasn't dealing with. So
right,
we would link up, and that became my circle of friends. Wesley and Lamar and all my homies that I grew
yeah,
up with. Nate, shout out to Nate Calloway, drummer in Vegas, one of my closest friends. Grew up with these guys, and we would fight and get into it, and somewhere along the line, 13, 14, 15, you begin to compound the behavior with substances, and I'm
yeah.
from North Stockton, and it was everywhere. And I remember doing this speech, later on in life, to a bunch of eighth graders. And the question was, is weed a gateway drug? And my response to that was, absolutely it is, but not for the same reasons that these other people are saying, right? I
Hmm.
don't agree with what they're saying, which is you smoke so much weed that you want to start smoking crack. Doesn't
Right.
happen like that. My gateway, what caused it to be a gateway drug for me and so many others that end up smoking weed or doing whatever, drinking whatever it is when you're younger, is you are around an older crowd that has access to those things.
Yeah.
So while I can get access to weed because, some guy's going to sell me a 5 pack of weed, on the street for sure. Even though I'm 14, 15, he doesn't care. He's going to sell me the 5 pack of weed. I can't
Yeah.
go to the store and buy papers. I can't go buy a lighter. So who do I have
Right.
to ask? The 18-year-old. And then the 18-year-old's like, well,
Introduces you to older people to become your
exactly.
mentors. And you,
Boom.
yep.
And they're drinking. Now I'm drinking.
Yep.
They're riding around cars. Now I'm riding around in the cars, 15, 16 years old. Now I'm not going to school because I want to get picked up and go smoke and go drink and go do whatever. And
Yeah.
that begin to
That's the
compound.
gateway.
Yeah. And
That's the
that's
gateway.
how,
And Jay, you mentioned something. I don't know how big a deal it was because I until you just mentioned that about stuttering, I've do research on people because I have curiosity about what that person is I'm talking to. But so I didn't know that about the stuttering. But I thought it was interesting that you brought up too that at school that there were two different trays, and one of them had the coffee cake on it, and the other one didn't. And if you had a uh, an extra 25 cents or a food stamp or whatever it was, you could get that coffee cake. And so you had a day like that where you picked up a couple of extra food stamps or whatever, and you got that coffee. If somebody or somehow told on you, but it made you feel like they were
oh, yeah.
bringing you down. Like
Yeah.
you had turned into this rotten person, and that you had, you were the
Yeah.
criminal of the world.
Yeah. I remember that. So it was second grade.
Second
And
grade. I mean,
it was
that's
second grade. It was second grade. It was second grade, Brent. And I didn't know that I couldn't take the tickets off I'm just like tickets, right? It was tickets. And you would have to have a ticket in order to get an extra the coffee cake.
yeah.
And I just took a ticket from my teacher's desk and went and got me a coffee cake. Oh man, it was a big deal. Oh, you stole the ticket. I'm like, the ticket was right there. I didn't know. I'm in second grade. I wanted a coffee cake. And
Coffee cake is what you wanted.
oh man, it
The
was it was
ticket got you the
I was
coffee cake.
great. It started. My criminal activity started in second grade, Brent. I was destined to go to prison from there. No, but it shows you like, we really don't think about the little things that happen when you're younger that shape your perception when you're older. I
Right.
was reading something around why a lot of young black or young boys of color grow up, and when they hit puberty, they just explodes into, alcoholism or violent
Right.
behavior. And, some of the people who, have a different school of thought is like, oh, because they're black or brown or whatever. But if you go a layer deeper and stop with the ignorance, what you realize is between the ages of 3 and 5,
Hmm.
the synapses in our brain are being, created. They're being developed. And the
Hmm.
synapses in your brain really regulate the neural pathways. And so if you're told no, right, that sends a signal to another part of your brain and you get frustrated. That's when kids have temper tantrums because they can't
Yeah.
regulate their emotion. They
Right. They're
want a
frustrated.
cookie, you tell them no. There's no regulation that says, "Oh, daddy or mommy told me no because it has
Right.
sugar," because they don't have those synapses yet. And so
Right.
between the ages of 3 and 5, it's very important to have conversations about why you're telling the kid no and let them process those things and build up healthy synapses. What happens in black and brown neighborhoods? The parents don't have time for that because, and not
Yeah.
even just black and brown neighborhoods, literally like economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. So poor white people, if you are poor, or if you, I hate to use the term poor. Let me take a step back. If you do not have the economic means to slow down every time your kid wants something and to explain that, if you are working 2 jobs and are trying to get your kid to sleep at 7:30 so he can get up or she can get up at 7:30 in the morning and take and go to school so you can be at work by 8:15, you don't have time to explain to your child why they can't have a cookie because sugar is bad and you get cavities from that. You don't have
Yeah.
that
Right.
time over and over and over, right?
Right.
And so compounding those things, you are yelling at your kid, saying, no, you can't have it, and they're building up these synapses in their brains where, like, you know what? when puberty hits, right, it's like,
I'm going.
don't tell me no. Exactly. And then, and so throughout their entire life, we criminalize that behavior
Yeah,
in education settings because in our education system, unfortunately, teachers don't have the time because the classrooms are too full and the funding is not there to slow down and say, well, actually, Jay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I'm not going to send you to the principal's office. But I'm going to explain to you why taking that ticket is not the way to go about business. Now, if you would have asked me for a ticket, I would have gave you a ticket, but it's okay. The teacher did not do that because
no,
rules and regulations say send Jay to the principal's office, call his
take care
parents,
of it.
and then
Right,
it reinforces what I was told when I was 3 to 5, which I was the last of 8. My parents didn't have time to slow down and tell me, hey, it's okay, don't cry, right? And that
right.
happens all across the country, all across the world, and that's why I'm a big advocate for building in um, social economic learning
Yeah.
between ages of
Well, that's
three
what
and
I like
6.
about. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead of your on the time done stuff, but what I really like about what you do with time done is you feed them what they need, what they need, and you build that person up, and then you say, hey, by the way, I'm going to need some help from you. Now that you're
Yeah,
built up, you're going to
yeah,
have to help me within the community here,
100%.
and there needs to be more of that dynamic in a lot of things that we got going on with uh, important topics of solutions. You got to build somebody up to make them where they want to be able to make something happen or make an impact. They can't make it when they're down in the ditch.
Yeah, and you have to help them rebuild those neural pathways,
Exactly.
right?
It's fun. It's funny when you say that, Jay, because I remember my dad. He was an attorney by trade, and so when I was little, when he would spank before he spanked me, he would set me down and ask me why he was going to spank me, and I would have to tell him why he was going to spank me, and then he would spank me.
Yeah, yeah. So like
Yeah, it's weird.
he literally, yeah, yeah. It's like I don't want to do this, but I'm going to
I
do
don't
this.
want to do this, but tell me why I have to do this.
Yeah, yeah. And that's building systems around the biological nature of humans that go
Yeah,
through these institutions and systems should be the way we should be building systems, but we don't. We build systems to maintain budgets and become efficient systems for the system's sake and not
absolutely.
for the participants' sake.
And
That's why I love.
it's also how you introduce somebody to that system. Like you had an experience, young teenager, fireworks are exploding, and I think if I understand right, Jay, the police officers show up and they think it was gunfire,
Yeah,
and I mean that's a very negative experience to be approached into that world with police officers and you know the heightened feeling of that as a teenager. I mean, how old were you when that happened?
be like, oof, probably 12, maybe
That's
younger
young.
than
That's like
that.
in sixth grade.
Or maybe younger than that. So we're at church Thursday night. Thursday was prayer night. And if you know anything about Pentecostal black churches, prayer goes for a long time. Prayer goes for a long time, man. And we were there. It was probably like 8 o'clock. They've been praying for 4 hours straight, 5 hours, 3, 4 hours straight. And they tell you go in the car because you're tired. You don't want to be in the church while they're praying because they're going to call you up there eventually, and they're going
Mm-hmm.
to hit you with the oil and
You're gonna take it.
lather you with oil. Like freaking, So we're all in the car. It's me, my sister Erica, my sister Lauren, and a very close family friend, Katrina. And she's outside. I don't know why she was outside the car. We're all in a minivan, and we hear fireworks going off. It's around 4th of July. It's Central Stockton, so Central Stockton is really known as a hotbed for drug abuse and criminal activity. And she could. We hear the fireworks, and we're trying to see where the fireworks are at. And Katrina's running around the car. Let me in, let me in. And so we're laughing like, no, 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 we're not gonna let you in. And finally we let her in. She's like, that were gunshots. We're like, oh, gunshots, okay, whatever. And so we're kind of like all scared. And all of a sudden, police cars come into the church parking lot. And mind you, it's a small church parking lot. And so we're at the back of it facing the street. And we can see the cars coming in to the parking lot and face us, and all like in a semicircle surround the car, and all these cops get out and draw their guns, and we're out the car by this moment, and we're kids, like they can visibly see like we are small, frail kids.
Yeah.
And even when we exit the car, they still had their guns drawn, and tell us to get on the ground, and we're all crying and trembling. This
Oh
is my
yeah, it had
first
to be
time having a
scary.
gun pointed at me. This is my first time having a gun pointed at me. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to do, and oh man, the my parents and the deacons and the women of the church came out of that church and let them have it, boy. And that was that. I had a sense of, while I was scared, I've never seen my fear in my dad's eyes and
Hmm.
anger in my
Hmm.
mom's eyes like I seen that day. My mom
Yeah.
was like a lioness. She went from praying to, listen, these are my babies. You are wrong. Who like and we got a formal apology, and but that was very a very traumatic experience. Something I remember for the rest of my day. And look, I didn't hold it against the police,
Yeah.
but it's still scary to have multiple guns pointed at you when you're a kid and saying get on the ground. It's not a good feeling at
Yeah.
all.
That's a scary experience. So take us, Jay, into as you were kind of getting into more and more things in your teenage years, kind of walking in that wild arena on the streets and doing. Can you walk us into um, the night that things went down for you?
Yeah, yeah. So like I was saying, you know, uh growing up I didn't have had a great upbringing, but my parents worked. They worked. They went back to school. They got their masters. They were working. So, by the time I came along in the '80s, they were already driving long haul trucks. My mom working as an engineer. My mom's an engineer by trade. My
Yeah.
dad's a pastor and truck driver by trade. And so it, we were.
How'd they meet? Because I know your dad's from Oklahoma. Your mom was
Yeah, yeah. Well, it depends on who you
L.A.
ask. Depends on who you ask. My dad says he moved to L.A. and this girl used to flag him down every day, and finally he stopped and picked her up. And my mom, when she tells the story, is slightly different. She says that this old creepy guy used to follow her home every day. And finally, he got her in the car, and then they have 8 kids and 30 grandkids. 20 years later. But
Uh,
yeah, yeah, old
well,
country
shit,
preacher.
that's a love story.
Yeah, it's a love story, or it's a different type of story, depending on who you ask. But yeah, it's so they worked. The value
Yeah.
of work and pull yourself up by your bootstraps was like embedded in us as a child, but I really didn't have that connection with my dad. He was always
Mhm.
gone. He was always providing for the house, and so I was always that 3 to 5 years old. I didn't have those synapses right, and I believe that's where when I did hit puberty at 13, I'm already out there. I'm already smoking weed. I'm already hanging out with people that were significantly older than me. My brother's friends. They're lived right on the street where I used to walk home from middle school. So it was always like stop at their house. And
Fall into the sibling order. Where did you fall into
I'm
the
last.
eight?
I'm the last of
Oh, you're the
8.
youngest.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
the
the last.
baby.
I'm the last of 8. So it's me,
Wow.
and my sister who's a year
Wow.
older than me, and then I have another sister 2 years older than my brother. And so my brother's friends is who I used to hang out with because his friends had younger brothers. So it was all
Yeah.
of
Okay.
us,
Yeah.
and then we used to hang out with them and see what they were doing, and then
You
emulate
had
what they
like a
were
little
doing.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so we took it one step further than they did. They were like drinking and smoking. We were like, okay, we're gonna fight, drink, and smoke, and it just escalated. I remember 14, 15, feeling like I didn't want to be at home anymore, and had like this crazy idea that I knew what the world wanted for me. And I was a misguided kid, and my parents didn't understand, and I was a privileged kid that just did some dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And that was going on for 2 years, and ended up stealing a bottle of alcohol, going to juvenile hall for a bottle of alcohol, and at age 18, 19, well, fresh out of high school. So this was like graduated high school. 10 months later, I'm trying to figure my life out. I'm like, all my friends graduated. Nate went off to the army. I'm like, I can't
What am
I
I going to
can't
do?
be the only schmuck here in Stockton not doing anything with my life.
Yeah.
And so I decided to, go and take a test to go to UTI, it's Universal Technical Institute, to build, cars, to be an automotive technician.
Yeah.
And I,
Which is a
took
good
the
job,
test.
by the way.
Yeah, I know. And I took the test and I scored really high. I've always had like this knack for learning and thirst for knowledge. Just didn't really mesh with, kind of my lifestyle choice as a kid. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to this thing in Phoenix, but I want some money. And, with some friends and got drunk, got high, ended up involved with a robbery 10 months after my 18th birthday. I was the only one that got caught.
That's bad.
We didn't get
That's
any money.
unlucky.
Yeah, we didn't get any money. Nobody got really hurt. It was a dumb mistake by a misguided, kid that didn't know left from right. And because there was a gun involved, um,
They
they
enhanced
gave me
everything.
7 years, 8 months, and 2 strikes. You
Oh
know,
man.
yeah, and I was the first in my family to go to prison. I didn't understand at the time, but the law, there's a law on the books in California. It's a gun enhancement law.
Yeah.
Uh, Penal Code
Whenever a
12.
gun's involved, they enhance those things up, and
Yeah, yeah, it's Penal Code 12022.5. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about picking up a gun and using it in the commission of a crime, there is a law, Penal Code 12022.53. 120 Understand that law, because that law will put you in jail for life and you will never
wow.
see the light of day. And that's what I was charged under. And luckily, there's another law on the books, Penal Code 12022.5, not 0.53, but point 0.5, that gives a lesser sentence. And we got an attorney, and I was given that lesser sentence. And the judge said, either we give you 13 years with 1 strike or 7 years with 2. And my dad said, why would you take more years? Because, you're not going to get out and commit any more crimes.
So
And
you
I was
had
like,
one crime but 2 strikes.
1 crime but 2 strikes, and because I had a gun, and then the
Yep.
robbery, and I didn't understand it. And my dad was like, "Well, if you want to get out and be a knucklehead, then take the 1 strike and do more years." And I'm like, "I'm not gonna do double the years." And so
No.
I made the decision there that listen, I'm gonna have 2 strikes, and I have no other chances. So this is me not looking back. And I took the deal. I remember the day I took the deal. I went back to the pod in the county jail, and I felt a sense of relief because all the things, all the disrespect, all the disappointment, all the anxiety I caused my family, I felt like this was me paying for all of that.
Mm.
Um, what I didn't realize is it wasn't me paying for harming my family. It was actually going to do more harm to
Yeah.
my family, me leaving and my presence not being there. And so I had a lot to unpack over 7 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
that,
I mean,
but
it's something we talk. It's something we talk about here, Jay, a lot. Is when somebody goes to prison, their family goes to prison, and all
Mhm.
those people deal with that in their own way, and hopefully they can lean on each other. But it affects everybody. I mean, I had a wife and 3 daughters when I went to prison, and they were 2 were in college, 1 was in high school, and it was a lot to deal with. And my wife happened to she was like a superhero. She should have worn a cape, and I think that's how we got through it, because the way she handled it and how she got through it. I think the girls looked at that and used that as strength. But so many times, family members just split and scatter when that happens, and it becomes a disaster zone. But before we get into, I want to get into this next step of how you walked into your world of prison. I want to recognize our new show sponsor. Nymer Success Podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group. It's the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you that this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or have made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So, Jay, at that time, I mean, taking on 7 years that's a big, I got a 5-year sentence, and I remember when I got sentenced to 5 years because I had, with probation to 5 years was my plea, and she maxed everybody out, and I almost feel like when I had that happen, I almost was like it was an outer body experience. I was like, oh my God, that's 5 years of my life. I don't even know if I remember even breathing. It was just like, I don't know. And then you figure out how to step through because you never know how you're going to deal with something, but you just start dealing with it. How did you get into what was it going through your mind at that time? You're
I
only
accept.
19 years old, right?
Yeah, I just turned 19. I had accepted it. I was ready. I was well.
You're ready.
The county jail sucks. By the way, they
It's
make
worse.
sure that yeah. They make sure that you are ready to go.
Yes,
you're,
it's an
you're nice
advantage to
and
go to prison.
ripe. And make sure you are nice and ripe. You are nice and ripe and ready
Yep,
to
get
go.
out of here. Right.
Yes, yes. I was ready to go. I was ready to go, and I just didn't want. I had heard all the stories from people who have been to prison. We're like, yo, prison is way better than this.
Hmm.
Way better than this. You have more freedom. You can start your visits. You get on a program. You can,
Yeah.
go to school. All these different things they were telling me. And so I was ready to make it right. I was like, you know what? I got 7 years. I got 7 years to work on myself. I spent the last 7 years goofing around and, disrespecting my parents. So I had already at this mind state that everybody that, you know, wanted me to succeed, I was going to prove them right. And everybody that didn't
Hmm.
want me to succeed, I was going to prove them wrong. Right. And so I had already made up my mind
Yeah.
that I was going
Yeah.
to take this 7 years and turn it into. Okay.
I lose you there, Jay? You there? I got you. You just froze up there for a minute. I can hear you. It's funny. It just froze up out of nowhere because you were fine. Yeah, I got you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jay? Can you hear me, Jay? Jay, can you hear me? Jay? Jay, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jay? You got fuzzy, which is okay if because this FM, this Riverside FM corrects all this stuff, but you all of a sudden got. Oh,
How's this?
Okay, Jay.
There
We're
we
okay.
go.
All right.
We're okay. We're okay.
Was it on your side or my side?
I think it was on my side. It was
Okay. Because all of a sudden, I mean, you were really good, and then all of a sudden you went fuzzy.
yeah, it was on my side. It was on my side.
Okay, so I'll bring you back into where we were talking about you being prepared. So I'll bring us back into that.
Yeah.
So Jay, you were saying that really at the time that you got that sentence, the 7 years, you were really prepared. You've been in the county jail. Everybody was telling you that prison's better, and you were like, "Man, I got to get out of here. I'm ready to get this going."
Yeah, I was right. I was I was right. They definitely make county jail as uncomfortable as possible. And when you're in there, you're talking to a bunch of different other people. Um, two types of folks. One, people who've never been sentenced or been to jail or prison, and two, the people who've been there and are telling you, hey, if you're going to take a deal here, or if you know you're going to get some time, get the best deal, go to prison, start your time now.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, prison is just with a lot more programming, a lot more freedom, and then two, your time starts differently. So in county
Mm-hmm.
jail, you're doing like dead time. You're not getting
I
time
mean, it
off.
doesn't count for anything, right?
Yeah, well, you're getting a day for day, right? So it's like
Right.
one day is one day, but in prison, in California at least, there's like if you do one day with no accidents or no incidents, rather, um, you know, you get time off for that. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't qualify for time and a half, but it was like time and an extra couple of hours, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that leads up to the 15%, which is 85%. You do 85% of your time, you go to prison, that starts. So I
Mm-hmm.
was ready. I was ready to get going. I was ready to kind of, stop with the, because you feel like, okay, if you know you did it, right? There are folks who absolutely did not do it, right?
Yeah. Right.
But the majority of people that find themselves in jail, let's be honest, they did that shit, right?
Right.
It's like, now you're just negotiating, right? And so I'm literally negotiating with myself while I'm negotiating with my attorney, while I'm negotiating with the state. And
You know what's funny about that, Jay, is you got like when I was in prison, I felt like I had, uh, everybody was innocent, everybody was a professional athlete, everybody was a millionaire. You just kind of like make up your own world. It was kind of crazy because I mean you
yeah,
didn't know who anybody really was
yeah, yeah,
unless they were close to you.
yeah, and that's what I was like, it's time to go. So I decided to take my punishment and was like, let's go. So I remember taking it and transferring out, going to Tracy. So I was in Stockton, San Joaquin County, and then they transferred me to Tracy, Dual Vocational Institute. It's DVI. It's now closed, by the way. But
Mm-hmm.
DVI was reception centers. So you go to these reception centers, and they classify you. It takes about a month or two to classify you, your custody level. If you are level 1, which is the lowest, or you level 4, which is the highest, where you're going to go, what do you want to do. You take your
Mm-hmm.
CAPES test, which is your education test to see what education level are you in. If you don't score above like a 10.0 or 9.0, they put you into remedial courses where you have to go get your GED. I had my GED, and
Mm-hmm.
and I scored high, so they're basically put me on a track for work. So what do you want to learn, right? I wanted to go into auto mechanic, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right? Auto body and paint, which was the one that I actually chose. And then reception center was interesting because you get your first taste of prison. It's not really it's prison, but it's not really the prison because you're
Right.
locked down most of the day.
Right.
But you get your taste for the different cultures in prison. Right? I'll just say that in
That's
California
all
there is
segregated.
definitely different cultures, and I like so I make it a point, Brent, just to I don't talk about prison politics, you know, publicly at all. Full stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll hear me say one or few things, but in terms of like how prison goes, how it's set up, I don't talk about that at all. I leave that in prison. There are still guys serving time,
Oh yeah.
still women serving time in prison,
Yeah.
and when you're in there, you need all the tricks of the trade you get. So
Yep.
I don't.
I hear you, man.
Yeah, I do not say anything about what goes on in prison, you know, at all. But I would say that I got my first taste of the culture, and definitely the segregation. There's definitely real segregation that happens, forced segregation. It's not a chosen segregation. It's forced
Right.
upon you when you get in there. It's like you
Yeah.
go over here, you go over here. They classify you by race. That's what it is.
Hmm.
You go with the
Yeah.
race.
Very
You're
primitive. Very
Yep,
primitive.
very primitive, and you get your first taste of how it's going to be. And then I was level 3. Starting out, I had like 30 points. So California is dictated by a point system.
Hmm.
You lower your points every year. You higher your points every year. If you get an incident, you get in a fight, you get 6 points or 4 points or 8 points or whatever. If you get to 52 points, that's level 4. They ship you off to a more secure, maximum
Hmm.
security prison, and it's by design. They call it 180 or 270 design. It's basically how prisons were designed back in the medieval times. That's when they came up with these designs, and are really based on the amount of people they can house in one unit,
Hmm.
and how many guards need to supervise those individuals based on severity of violent level. Um,
Hmm.
and so I went in there with 32, 34 points, I believe, and got to Solano State Prison. And Solano at the time in 2004, 2005 was definitely a prison that was in the midst of a war.
Ah,
And so I went when it was wartime inside
wow.
prison. And I did 4 years in
I've
different.
heard of that. I mean,
Yeah,
Bloody Beaumont has some terrible stories down in
yeah,
Texas of wartime.
yeah. So I did the entire time I was there, it was war. It was, and and if you've been to California prisons, wars have different battles. You get into
Hmm.
battles with different other factions, and so there was multiple things happening when I was there. And I won't speak on a lot of that stuff. But if you catch me in person, then we can sit down. And I can, explain to you. But so I kind of doing wartime, and my points shot up quickly. I wasn't, I didn't last going. I didn't last having a job that lasted about like a month. But when
Yeah.
you're in war, right? And so, um, my time in prison was really spent politicking, and that got me 2 years in solitary confinement.
Which I was waiting for you to get there. I cannot even fathom because I saw guys that would go to the hole for 6 weeks and come back looking different.
Yeah.
And 2 years. I mean, Jay, how does a man get through that mentally? Knowing, I mean, I didn't guess you even knew how long you were being locked down, did you?
Well, initially they put you in the hole, and then you go through, basically the prison's version of,
Court system.
court system, and you kind of know based on what happened. My situation I can speak about because it was, you can look through the paperwork. I was involved with a melee. It was, someone got hurt, and I didn't do the hurting, but I was involved
Hmm.
with it.
Which
And
happens a lot in prison. They take
yeah,
one
yeah,
person and
yeah.
the whole group, anybody's around there, everybody
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. So I didn't, personally hurt somebody, but somebody got hurt, and I was named.
And Jay, I'll tell you that when I say that, it seems like, and what you're talking about, somebody got hurt. In a thing that I remember is it was the World Series, and they had chased somebody with a cell phone, and they couldn't find out where he went. They chased, and everybody's wearing the same clothes, and they lost him. And so they shut the whole place and locked everybody down that night for the seventh game of the World Series. And it's stuff like that when you are in an environment where you don't really have very many rights. But in the prison system, if you're around something, you don't have to be involved in it. If you're just around something, you're cooked. Or if they see you talking to somebody sees that guy talking to the prison guard, that's a death march for that guy for snitching. And he might be talking about getting a job at the food warehouse. But it's a crazy, crazy world when you think about where you are in proximity to what's going on in the prison environment.
And that's pretty much how mine happened. It was wrong place, wrong time, and I didn't say much in the proceedings. I was just like, whatever y'all gonna do, I'm not gonna try to defend myself.
Yeah.
Because again, when you politic and you can't really say too much, so I let them do what they do, and they gave me about 18 months in the hole in the shoe. So you have the hole.
Yeah.
I did 6 months going through the process, and then 18 months into the segregated housing unit where they ship you out. And they ship me away from my family because Solana was about 30, 40 miles from my family, so my family would be able to come see me, and the girl friend at the time I had could be able to come see me. But when they shipped me down to Tehachapi, which is 300 miles from my family, it became increasingly difficult to see my family. And so, when I got there, how I got through it was the first question, Brent. Like, I got there, and 2 days after I got there, heard this banging on the wall. So, mind you, I'm in the hole. I'm in prison.
The real stuff, right?
And I get there, and I have none of my possessions. I have no TV, no books, no anything. And some guy starts banging on my wall. And I know I'm going to be there for at least 2 years. And I have 2 strikes. So at any moment in time, they could say, we want to take you back to court because you were involved with someone getting hurt inside prison, and we're going to strike you out.
3 strikes.
That was looming over my head. So I'm stressed out. I get to the cell. I'm asleep for about a day because you sleep it all off and you're like, oh my God, I'm actually in the shoe. I'm in the hole. And
not
it's
for
just
a day.
And not for a day, but for 2 years by myself. And the second day, I get this banging on the wall. Poop, 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 poop. And somebody bangs on the wall, you get an event, you start talking. Everyone who's been to prison know what I'm talking about, right? So I hear banging on the wall. I don't want to answer because I'm in jail. And I may get struck out. Banging continues. Poop, poop, poop. Banging gets louder. Poop, 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 poop. I'm like, okay, I'm going to cuss this dude out. I get up on my toilet, get in the bed. I'm like, yo, what do you want, homie? And he's like, hey, who are you? Like, yo, I'm J.O. And I give him where I'm from and my credentials, right? In the most, meanest way I can give it to him without being disrespectful. Because you never want to disrespect anybody in print.
No, respect's a big deal.
Yep. And so he says, that's what you are. Ask who you are. And he starts laughing and he says my name, J.O., J.O., J.O. And I'm like, dude, and he keeps saying it over and over and over and over for it seemed like all day. And I begin to play that question back in my head. Who am I? Am I, am I from North California? Am I a Crip? Am I J.O.? Am I this? Am I that? Am I, you know what I mean? And I'm like, nah, that's what, like, and it was just like, you have a time to think. You have a lot of time to think while you're in there. And so I just was literally obsessing over that question. Because some people obsess over some relationship or, like some people obsess over the thing that happened. And, especially going through an investigation, you're like, okay, well, what's going on here? And trying to, piece it all together. And I just became obsessed with that one question. And I couldn't shake it.
Who am I?
And I couldn't answer. I was like, well, who am I? I'm a man. I'm like, that's of course, biologically I'm a guy. Like, okay.
Right.
But who am I? Like, and I couldn't really answer the question. And that's when it all broke for me. It broke. That's when
really
it broke.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's when it broke.
That happened in the time of being in the solitary cell.
Yeah, that's when it broke. That's when the dam broke. That was the demarcation line there. That was, now I understand what my dad told me. Now I understand with all these years what he was saying. Like, this is not you. This is not you. And yeah, I realized it wasn't me. I
You
realized that,
start seeing the promise that you had in you
yeah,
that you just
yeah,
recognized.
yep.
Yeah.
That it was in that moment of just complete and utter loneliness that I've been grasping for a piece of me that I thought I needed to find externally, but
Mm-hmm.
everything I needed was already in me.
Mm.
And I didn't
Need to
have to
turn it
put
on.
all the external labels on me.
Yeah.
Everything that I've heard about myself, somebody told me about myself.
Right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that Brent, when you realize that everything up until that moment came from external validation
Yeah.
and coupled with you didn't need it
Yeah.
because you already had in you everything that
You
you
already
needed
need
to
it.
be great.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, it was like a revelation. Like I just learned that I just won the lotto, but I also lost it at the same time, right?
Because
You
you're
know?
nostalgic. Well, I mean, so from that point on, that is incredible. At
Yeah.
that moment, you basically turn to yourself and say, "Man, I'm Jay Jordan. I can do all the things I want to do." What did you start doing? Because you're still in
Oh
prison.
man. Oh man. I I asked for a piece of paper and a pencil. When you get a revelation like that, you write.
Got to start writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't read. Don't write. If you have an epiphany, if you are feeling like I got it,
Yeah.
stop everything. Don't get on the
Get it
phone.
out.
Like sit down in a quiet room, just by yourself, no distractions, and start writing. Start drawing. I
Mm-hmm.
started drawing and sketching, and oh man! And then I started to write my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my mom, I said, "Can you please send me all the books?" That's
All the
okay
books I
with
need.
this. All the books. And she would send me reams and reams and reams of internet searches. Oh, I love my mama. Just reams of internet searches. I'd be like, yo, search this and 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 this. Because books will take forever to get there.
Sure.
And she would next day mail me thick manila envelopes full of internet searches. And my room became like a law library of just like knowledge. And I wanted to learn about history and math and different theories and philosophy and democracy and how democracy came to be and do we
Yeah.
live in a democracy or do we live in a democratic
Republic.
republic and
Yeah.
like all of it. I became obsessed with just learning about society and myself and religion. I read this book, The Golden Bow. It had to be about 1,000, 2,000 pages of just um different spiritual practices and faith traditions, like everyone you can think of. I
Mm-hmm.
devoured that book like 5 times. I was hungry, Brent. I got hungry, man. I became so introspective. It was crazy. And they put this guy in my cell after like 6 months. So like 6 months go past, and I'm growing a beard. I never grew a beard before. My beard is
Mm-hmm.
grown. My hair is all crazy. And they're like, they think I'm going crazy. I'm just hungry for knowledge. I'm like, and I'm getting out here like this guy. I'm not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's probably a good thing. They thought you were crazy.
I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not really eating too much. I'm working out like crazy.
Yeah.
I keep getting these packages every day, these rims of paper. I'm like reading them. They're like, what? I'm putting them using toothpaste to put these papers on the wall. I got
Man.
drawings everywhere. They're like, this guy is losing his mind, you know? But I was finding myself. I
Yeah.
lost my mind, but I found myself. I melted all the
I should
external
do a
forces away.
T-shirt. I lost my mind but found myself.
Yeah, you know, and it was great. I mean, I wrote plays. I read this book, the Screenwriter's Bible by David Trottier.
Yeah.
I wrote plays for my mom, and she would act them out and send me pictures of the plays at the church and huge productions.
Unbelievable.
Massive productions. I wrote a book, The Idiot's Guide to Prison, where I mirrored the operation manual of prison. And I like
Yeah.
literally took chapter by chapter and basically said, this is what you do. This is what they want you to do. This is how you do it.
This is the
Um,
prison rules. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wrote a master thesis called I Am, basically saying what I'm telling you. It's everything that you need is already inside of you. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look for external validation, you're watering down your true self,
Mm.
right? Like it was just so much. I think it was probably the culmination of, you know,
How close were you to getting out when all this was taking place?
so I got out in 20, I went to the hole in 2022. Excuse me, 2002. No, 2004. I went to the hole
Mm-hmm.
in 2004. Sorry, my dates are mixed up. I went to the hole in 2008
Okay.
because I was in the hole when Obama was elected.
Okay.
And then I got out the hole in 2010.
Gotcha. Okay. Then
So
you had a
between
couple of years
2008
left.
and 2010. And so I was seeing all of the world crumble,
Yeah.
my family going through it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love my parents. They still sent me stuff, even though they're going through their own stuff outside. They still sent me stuff
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't stop. I seen the address change. I'm like, why'd you move? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. You know, all my
Yeah.
family were living in one house together,
Yeah.
save money. And I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just learning and turning on the TV. And I'm seeing the economic, downfall. I'm learning about that. Send me, about what Obama's doing about just learning it. I learned
Yeah.
all that I could learn. And that's when I, realized, oh man, I'm gonna I'm gonna do something when I get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like halfway through. I'm like, oh, I'm getting out. What am I gonna do?
All right, folks, we're going to end part one here with Jay Jordan because he's got so much stuff to talk about once he gets out, how he creates his world in reentry, all the incredible things that he did in reentry. So tune in next week for part two with Jay Jordan. It's some good stuff. It's a whole nother interview of incredible things that this guy, Jay Jordan, has done since he got out, all the way to having a Phil sign, Gavin Newsom handing him the pen. It's a big deal. Hey, go if you need a book to read while you're waiting for part two. Go to Amazon, Brent Cassidy, Nightmare Success. Get my book. Keep it up with the likes and social media comments and the Apple reviews. I'm loving it. Go to BrentCassidy.com. If you're looking for anything else with me, it's all right there. I want to thank Jay Jordan for part one here today. And as I used to say to my people when I was writing stuff back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. See you back here next week. Thanks, everybody.